Coco Gauff simply smiled and said something that stopped the throng cold without yelling or arguing. While 450,000 Filipinos crowded the stands and yelled the name of another player, the world number 4, an 11-time WTA champion, stood on center court in Dubai. Under that kind of strain, most sportsmen would give in and express irritation, but Gauff did something unexpected and subdued. Something that made clear why she has won the Grand Slam. When she did speak, it was for the folks who weren't supporting her, not the umpire or the cameras. February 18, 2026, the center court of the Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Championships. Coco Gauff had just defeated Elise Mertens in a thrilling 3-set encounter in which she saved 3 match points and went deeper than she has in months. The kind of triumph that makes everyone realize why she is a Grand Slam champion. Sweat streaming, excitement pumping. The stands were full and the crowd was still buzzing when she took the microphone for her on-court interview, something that doesn't typically happen in Dubai's early rounds. Gauff then turned to face the tunnel where the next game would take place. She was aware of who was waiting and the purpose of the gathering. She spoke into the microphone, "I know you guys are probably here for Alex, so I'm sorry to make you wait. Give that some thought." A player who has won the U.S. championship, signed multimillion-dollar sponsorship deals, and been on magazine covers is ranked 4th in the world. As a teenager, Open apologized to the audience for being the main attraction. With a smile that suggested she wasn't taking any of it personally, she continued, "If I'm not mistaken, I think some of you guys are cheering for me, so I appreciate it a lot." This was the first indication that Coco Gauff had already made up her mind on how to deal with the Alex Eala effect. Not with annoyance or bitterness, but with something much more hazardous to the psychological edge of an adversary. She was going to like it. Everything was explained by the numbers. Over 20% of Dubai's population, or more than 450,000 Filipino expats, reside there. In addition to representing the Philippines, Alex Eala represented hundreds of thousands of Filipinos who seldom see their flag flown on international stages when she appeared in court in the United Arab Emirates. Gauff was aware of this, and rather than denying it, she publicly admitted it. Disarmingly and gracefully, the apology was a tactic rather than a sign of weakness. On February 19, 2026, a day later, the stadium, crowded stands, and sea of Philippine flags were all the same. However, Gauff was entering the court rather than leaving it this time. Alex Eala, the 20-year-old sensation who had already defeated world number 8, was standing in opposition to her. Sorana Cirstea will advance to her second WTA 1000 quarterfinal alongside Jasmine Paolini. Every game had become a home game thanks to the Rafael Nadal Academy product. Before the first ball was even hit, the crowd began yelling, "Let's go, Alex!" Thanks to this woman. The game lasted for 67 minutes. Gauff 10,662. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare, not just a victory. Then Gauff reached for the microphone once more, and this time she explained how she had turned off the noise. She said, "I brought that mindset today because I had a similar match at the French Open last year. I pretended it was my name whenever you guys cheered for Alex." She laughed. "I think it really helped me." Beneath the laughter of the audience was a discovery that every athlete, regardless of sport, ought to take note of. Gauff remarked, "You have to join them if you can't beat him." Legends employ this type of reverse psychology. Over the course of almost 20 years of competing against audiences who idolized Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic polished it. He discovered how to take advantage of the animosity and use each Roger chant as gasoline for his own flames. Even at the age of 21, Coco Gauff had already perfected the same feat. Gauff went on, "I must admit, it's great to be on a crowded court. I've participated in this competition for a long time, and seeing the stadium packed means a lot. If you look closely, you'll see that she wasn't merely being courteous. Rather, she was completely changing the story. The audience wasn't against her. Rather, they were in favor of tennis and demonstrated that she, Coco Gauff, was contributing to the sport's expansion. That's psychological armor, not just sportsmanship. This is where the narrative takes an unexpected turn. When asked about a hostile crowd, the majority of athletes gave generic responses. The fans were fantastic. Traveling is never easy. I simply made an effort to concentrate on my game. Coco Gauff took a different approach. She expressed gratitude to Alex Eala. Sincerely, not in a mocking or passive-aggressive manner. I want to express my gratitude to Alex for introducing a new audience to the sport. During her encore interview, Gauff added, I really appreciate it. I'll say it again. After being out-cheered in her own match, a world number 4 stood on a microphone and expressed gratitude to her opponent for making her feel like the bad guy. Gauff went on, I think it's great. I understand that playing in front of your home audience can be difficult at times, but I believe it's fantastic for the sport, so continue to be passionate and support your player. After 2 hours of yelling against her, the audience erupted in cheers. This was the unanticipated turning point, the subdued response that unveiled a more profound aspect of Coco Gauff's personality. She embraced the Eala effect rather than merely putting up with it. She recognized that tennis is a business and that new supporters, even those who oppose you, are the sport's ancestors. Gauff had stated before to the game, I think she's taken it to the next level in terms of bringing a new demographic. Yes, it's excellent for tennis in general. Being the antagonist would be disliked by most players. The majority would gripe about the unfairness of playing a home game on neutral ground, the loudness, and the imbalance. However, Coco Gauff, with 450,000 Filipino supporters, she saw opportunity, fresh eyes, fresh vitality, and a sport that was expanding thanks to a 20-year-old who refused to be disregarded. Gauff said, I think she's great. She's entertaining, in my opinion. She has a wonderful personality, in my opinion. March 9th, 2026. The BNP Paribas Open and Indian Wells. 3 weeks after Dubai, Gauff and Eala will play in another competition. However, the story's conclusion was different this time. Eala's game clicked in ways it hadn't in Dubai, and she breezed through the first set. The audience, which was still predominantly Filipino, was electrifying. Chants resounded, flags waved, and the excitement was unlike anything Gauff had ever encountered. Then an unforeseen event occurred. She began to be bothered by Gauff's arms. Eala was ahead 1-0 in the second set when the agony worsened, and the American went to the net. She gave up on the game. No drama, no pyrotechnics, and no controversy. Just a respectful conversation between two young athletes. However, this is what transpired next, and it's at this point that both participants' identities are fully revealed. Eala leaned in and spoke to Gauff at the net. Both the mics and the cameras failed to record the words. However, Gauff later disclosed what was mentioned during her news appearance. Gauff told reporters, "No, she just told me I hope I feel better, and things like that." Gauff's heart was revealed when he said, "I felt really bad to pull out. You never want to pull out, but more so for her because she was playing great tennis and I don't want to take anything away from the way that she was playing." Consider that. The woman who had been out-cheered, out-chanted, and transformed into the antagonist, Coco Gauff, was concerned that her departure would lessen Eala's triumph. She said, "I'd rather finish the match and lose 6-0, but at that point, I just felt that it was better to stop because the pain was getting worse and I didn't know what was going on." This is the quiet moment that the highlight reels won't show, when compassion triumphs over competition and two athletes who are both fighting for their careers recognize one another as fellow travelers on a difficult journey rather than as rivals. Gauff made a prediction at the end of her press conference that would turn out to be accurate. "I think she's going to have a great tournament." Allow me to present you with the facts that explains why Coco Gauff's response was so outstanding. Gauff wins 6-0, 6-2 in 67 minutes in Dubai, February 2026. Eala made 33 unintentional errors on her forehand, resulting in 8 wins. Gauff's first serve percentage increased by 12% from the previous round to 54%. "Let's go," Alex chants audible on broadcast, the thousands of Filipino fans in attendance. Eala wins by retirement in Indian Wells in March 2026. Gauff hum. Afterwards, Gauff said, "I don't want to take anything away from the way that she was playing." However, the most important numbers are not displayed on the scoreboard. There are 450,000 Filipinos living in Dubai. Over 700,000 Filipinos live in the United Arab Emirates. In 2026, Eala attracted record-breaking crowds at the following tournaments: Indian Wells, Melbourne, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai. And in the face of this mathematical reality, what did Coco Gauff do? She praised the imbalance rather than complaining about it. After winning in Dubai, Gauff remarked, "One match can change everything. Before I entered this competition, I was obviously not in a good mood, but you know, one match can make all the difference. At the beginning of this, I honestly didn't think I would be in the semi-finals, but I'm glad I'm here. That's what separates a decent player from a great one. A great player uses the crowd, even a hostile one, as fuel, whereas a decent player lets the crowd determine their mood. Gauff acknowledged that I wasn't feeling well, but she managed to get away. She converted a possible psychological catastrophe into a career high point by acting as though the applause was for her and thanking Eala for gaining new followers. And when she ultimately fell against Eala at Indian Wells due to injury rather than a loss on the scoreboard, she was more concerned with undermining her opponent's success than with her own suffering. Coco Gauff refrained from yelling, arguing with the umpire, or glaring at the supporters who were waving Philippine flags. She praised Alex Eala for introducing a new audience to the sport, grinned, and imagined that the applause was directed at her. It's the silent response that no one anticipated, and it says something significant about women's tennis's future. There is no end in sight to the Alex Eala impact. Filipino flags will fill the stands at every competition she competes in. The opportunity will overpower everything else in every game she plays. Opponents will have to decide whether to embrace it or resist the crowd. Coco Gauff chose the latter, and she prevailed. Gauff said, "I think it's great for the sport, so keep being enthusiastic and keep rooting for your player." These remarks were a message to every player on tour, not just the spectators in Dubai. The players who can adapt and learn to play for any side and in front of any crowd will succeed as the sport changes and new markets emerge. Gauff adjusted. She embraced the energy rather than fighting it, assumed the applause was for her, and left the court with a proud demeanor, having transformed a hostile setting into a personal triumph. The remaining question is easier to answer than it first appears. Do you fight or join the throng when they are against you? Coco Gauff made the decision to join them, and by doing so, she demonstrated grace under duress to the tennis community. Was Coco Gauff's subdued response the only way to withstand the Alex Eala impact, or was it the ultimate power move? For more stories that go beyond the score, leave a comment below and subscribe to Court Legacy. In front of 450,000 Filipinos chanting the name of another player, Coco Gauff stood. She didn't argue or scream. She thanked Alex Eala for introducing a new demographic to the sport, grinned, and imagined that the applause was directed at her. Then she prevailed. 60-62. When she had to withdraw against Eala at Indian Wells due to injury 3 weeks later, she was more concerned with undermining her opponent's triumph than with her own suffering. The fourth-ranked player in the world mastered the Alex Eala effect rather than merely surviving it. By doing this, she demonstrated to every player on the circuit how to manage the future of women's tennis.